The base was quiet that morning, the kind of stillness that only came before training days. Soldiers stretched, adjusted their gear, and talked in groups. Amid the crowd was Ava Morgan, her hair tied back under a regulation cap, looking no different than the others. To most eyes, she blended in, just another trainee in fatigues carrying her rifle with the same routine motion. But to the Navy SEALs around her, Ava stood out for one reason. She was the only woman in a unit that had never truly welcomed her. Quick pause. Comment where you're watching from, and if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind, and it's even crazier. The whispers started as soon as she walked past. "She'll never last," one man muttered. Another smirked. "This isn't a place for her. Chris Kyle wouldn't even waste a bullet training." Next to her, they laughed, mocking the very idea that a woman could match the legends of their trade. The snipers and warriors whose names had become sacred in Navy SEAL lore. Ava heard every word but kept her face unreadable. Years of discipline had taught her not to react. The colonel overseeing training called the group to formation. Today was no ordinary drill. It was an urban warfare simulation designed to push even seasoned men past their limits. Teams would be dropped into a fabricated city, complete with enemy combatants, hostage scenarios, and live ammunition under strict safety protocols. It was meant to test strategy, nerves, and precision under pressure. When the mission briefing ended, tension filled the air. The men stood tall, confident, while Ava checked her M4 carbine and the Barrett sniper rifle she had signed out. Some rolled their eyes when they saw her carrying it. "She won't even be able to fire that thing properly," one joked. They didn't know she had spent months perfecting her breathing, her trigger squeeze, her stillness under pressure. The simulation began. Helicopters thundered overhead as the teams were dropped onto the training field designed to mimic a war-torn city. Smoke rose in the distance, gunfire echoed through speakers, and sudden explosions shook the ground. The crisis was immediate. Hostages were pinned down inside a building guarded by well-armed hostiles. If the SEAL team failed, the mission would be marked as a catastrophic loss. Panic spread as the team fumbled under fire. Bullets cracked against walls, and men who had once mocked Ava found themselves scrambling for cover, shouting over one another. Doubt grew among them as the seconds ticked away. One shouted, "We can't get through that choke point, it's impossible!" Another hissed, "We're going to fail this. They'll say we couldn't even save fake hostages." Even Ava, steady as she appeared, felt the sting of memory. She remembered her father, a veteran who once told her that the world would never accept her as a soldier. His words haunted her. "They'll always doubt you. You'll have to be twice as strong." She crouched low, watching the men falter. Then she inhaled, slow and steady, and spoke with quiet confidence. "I can take the shot." Her words carried through the comms, cutting through the noise. Some laughed bitterly. "You? You think you can pull it off?" Another sneered. "This isn't a video game, Morgan. Don't embarrass yourself." But Ava wasn't boasting. She explained calmly, "I trained for this. I know the angles. Give me elevation and I'll clear the path." The colonel, monitoring from a command post, leaned closer to the screens. He had seen many men claim skill before, but something in Ava's voice carried a weight he recognized. Not arrogance, but certainty. They hesitated, but when the team ran out of options, Ava climbed a crumbling stairwell to the top of a shattered building. Dust filled the air, her boots crunching on broken glass. She set down the Barrett, extended its bipod, and aligned the scope. The environment pressed in around her, the smell of cordite, the rattle of distant gunfire, the faint tremor of the ground from simulated detonations. Every detail sharpened. Her pulse slowed. Time stretched thin. Through the scope, she saw the choke point, an enemy gunman perched with a heavy machine gun, pinning her team. One pull of his trigger could mow down any SEAL who dared to cross. The moment felt impossible, a challenge designed to break even the most skilled. She adjusted her breathing. Inhale. Exhale. Silence filled her mind. Then she squeezed the trigger. Fee-ee, Barrett thundered, echoing across the field like a cannon. For a heartbeat, there was only silence. Then the enemy target crumpled, his weapon clattering uselessly to the ground. The machine gun nest was destroyed. Her team froze, realizing the impossible had just been done. Gasps spread through comms. "No way," one whispered. Another said, "She actually did it. She just saved the mission." The colonel, watching on his monitors, narrowed his eyes in disbelief before a rare smile tugged at the corner of his mouth. Ava didn't celebrate. She simply gathered her weapon, descended the stairs, and rejoined her team. With the path clear, they surged forward, stormed the building, and secured the hostages. The mission ended with flawless success, something few had expected after the chaos of the first minutes. When the simulation wrapped and the men removed their helmets, the reactions were undeniable. Some stood in stunned silence. Others muttered, shaking their heads, ashamed at their earlier words. One finally admitted aloud, "She did what none of us could." Relief, awe, and disbelief mixed in their eyes as they looked at Ava. She remained calm, her voice even, her demeanor humble. When one asked how she had done it, she simply said, "Someone had to. I trusted myself." The colonel stepped forward, his boots heavy on the gravel. He studied Ava for a long moment, then addressed the team. "You mocked her power," he said firmly, "but today, you witnessed it. This is what courage looks like. This is what it means to believe in yourself when no one else does." His words carried weight, not just for Ava, but for every man who had doubted her. The day ended with silence in the barracks, not from disdain, but from respect. No one mocked her anymore. No one questioned her presence. She had surpassed them, not with arrogance, but with quiet bravery that spoke louder than words. And from that day forward, whenever doubt crept in, Ava Morgan's story was told as a reminder. Courage doesn't ask for permission. It doesn't wait for approval. It breaks limits, rewrites expectations, and proves that belief in oneself can silence the loudest critics. Because in the end, heroes are not the ones who boast. They are the ones who step forward when others step back and remind the world that greatness is not bound by who you are, but by what you dare to do. The desert sun beat down on the training grounds, baking the sand into a shimmering haze. Dust clung to uniforms, rifles, and the sweat-soaked brows of every soldier preparing for the day's exercise. Among the rows of Navy SEAL trainees stood Lieutenant Sarah Walker, helmet tucked under one arm, her boots planted firmly in the sand. To anyone passing by, she looked like any other soldier, disciplined and focused. Her expression was calm, blending into the crowd, just another face in a sea of warriors. But among the men, whispers traveled fast. "She won't last 5 minutes," one scoffed under his breath. Another chuckled, "This isn't the Marines anymore. This is SEALs. Michael Murphy wouldn't believe she's even here." They spoke the names of legends, Marcus Luttrell, Chris Kyle, heroes etched in military history, and compared them to Sarah with open mockery. She kept her silence, her face unreadable. The colonel stepped forward, his voice sharp. "Today's exercise is Operation Iron Valor. You'll face a war simulation, live explosives, shifting objectives, and a ticking clock. Fail, and your mission is marked lost. Quick pause, comment where you're watching from, and if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind, and it's even crazier." The plan was simple on paper: breach, defend, and rescue. But in simulations like these, simple often turned into chaos. The first wave hit fast. Smoke grenades burst in the air, gunfire crackled from hidden speakers, and the trainees moved as a unit. Sand sprayed under their boots as they advanced toward the mock village ahead. Then suddenly, the crisis erupted. A squad of simulated hostiles cut off their advance with suppressive fire from elevated ground. An unexpected explosive tore through the dirt just meters from their formation, scattering men into cover. The mission timer kept ticking, but the squad was pinned. If they failed to push forward, the hostages inside the compound would die, and the exercise would end in catastrophic failure. Panic spread instantly. "We can't move up!" one soldier yelled from behind a barricade. Another cursed. "We're sitting ducks here! This is impossible!" Doubt infected the group like wildfire. Even the bravest men hesitated, their nerves rattled by the intensity of the simulation. Sarah crouched low, her hands gripping the M249 SAW light machine gun she had signed out. The weapon was heavier than most preferred, but she knew its firepower could change the tide. Still, she felt the familiar sting of memory. She remembered Afghanistan, the night an IED claimed her closest friend. She remembered the faces of officers who told her she wasn't strong enough, that she should never try out for SEALs. The weight of those doubts pressed on her chest now, but she inhaled deeply, forcing the fear down. Then she stepped forward, raising her voice above the chaos. "I can hold the line. Give me a clear shot and cover the flanks." A soldier barked. Back. "Are you insane? That gun will overheat before you last a minute." Another shouted, "You'll get yourself killed out there." But Sarah's voice remained steady. "I've done this before. I know how to control it. Trust me." The colonel's eyes narrowed from the command tent, watching her through a live drone feed. He had heard countless men boast about their skills, only to crumble when the moment came. But Sarah's words carried no bravado. It was quiet determination, forged through scars and sacrifice. She dropped to the dirt, mounted the bipod of the M249, and locked her sights on the elevated positions. The world narrowed, every sound sharpened. The metallic clink of the belt-fed rounds, the crunch of gravel beneath her elbows, the distant rattle of simulated gunfire. Her breath slowed. The seconds dragged like hours. Then, the impossible moment arrived. Sarah squeezed the trigger. The M249 roared to life, a steady stream of firepower unleashing into the enemy nests. Sand and debris exploded from the impact points. Simulated hostiles dropped one by one. She shifted her aim, controlling the weapon with precision that few could master under such pressure. Her teammates watched in shock as she absorbed the recoil, her focus unbroken, her determination unwavering. For what felt like an eternity, the firefight raged. The barrel glowed faintly from heat. The ammo belt rattled as it fed round after round, and still she held her ground. When the last target fell, silence rippled across the range. The once impossible choke point had been cleared. The soldiers around her peeked from their cover, their expressions stunned. She just did that," one whispered. Another muttered, "No one lasts that long with a saw. No one." The disbelief was almost as loud as the gunfire had been. The colonel leaned forward, studying the feed. His voice, low and firm, carried through the comms. "That wasn't luck. That was skill. Remember what you just witnessed." Sarah stood slowly, reloading her weapon with practiced hands. She didn't celebrate or boast. She simply glanced at her team and said softly, "Someone had to." With the path cleared, the squad pushed forward, breaching the compound and completing the rescue. The mission clock stopped with seconds to spare. Operation Iron Valor had ended in success, a result no one had expected when panic first took hold. Back at the debrief, the room was heavy with silence. Men who had mocked her earlier avoided her gaze. The colonel stepped in, his eyes moving across the group before settling on Sarah. "You doubted her," he said bluntly. "You thought legends like Murphy or Luttrell would laugh at her. But today, she carried the spirit of those men, and she surpassed what any of you believed was possible. Sarah stood at ease, her gaze steady. She didn't smile, didn't boast. She only said, "I trusted myself. That's all." The words lingered long after the session ended. What she had shown them wasn't brute strength, but courage under fire, discipline in chaos, and belief in herself when no one else would. From that day forward, Sarah Walker's name was no longer a joke whispered in barracks. It became a reminder that courage knows no gender, no limitation, only the strength to rise when others fall back. Because in the end, true warriors are not those who boast the loudest. They are the ones who shoulder the burden, who hold the line when the world is collapsing, and who prove that breaking limits begins with believing in your own power. The night air over the desert was still, broken only by the hum of generators and the distant rumble of armored trucks. On the forward operating base, soldiers prepared for another joint training mission, moving with routine efficiency. Among them was Captain Emily Carter, her uniform neat, her face calm beneath the dim lights. To the untrained eye, she looked like just another officer in the crowd, blending into the mix of American Navy SEALs and British SAS soldiers stationed there. She carried herself quietly, rarely raising her voice, her rifle slung across her back. Most of the men around her had written her off before the mission even began. "A woman in this detachment?" one whispered. Another shook his head. "She doesn't belong here." John Basilone would laugh. Henry Johnson would shake his head. They spoke the names of warriors who had earned immortality in history, and in their comparison, Emily was dismissed as an afterthought. The colonel in charge outlined the mission: a simulated raid into enemy territory. A joint UK-US unit would infiltrate a mock desert compound under cover of night, extract sensitive intel, and exfiltrate before dawn. It sounded straightforward, but everyone knew drills like this could turn brutal in seconds. Quick pause. Comment where you're watching from. And if you love these stories, hit subscribe now. The next one will blow your mind, and it's even crazier. The exercise began under a moonless sky. Black-clad silhouettes moved across the sand, their rifles ready, their radios whispering instructions. Emily moved with them, steady and deliberate, checking corners, scanning the horizon. She looked like any other soldier in formation, blending into the rhythm of the team. Then suddenly, the crisis hit. As the unit approached the compound, simulated enemy forces ambushed them from the ridgeline. Gunfire erupted, harsh and unrelenting, as explosions lit the night. Communications jammed, cutting off contact with command. The plan collapsed instantly. If they failed to adapt, the mission would end in disaster. And in a real scenario, every soldier on the field would have been lost. Panic spread through the ranks. "We're cut off!" one SEAL shouted. Another yelled, "They've got us! Surrounded!" Fear bled into their voices, even among men trained to withstand chaos. Doubt poisoned the group as the simulated enemies pressed harder. "We can't get through! We're finished!" Even Emily felt the weight in her chest. She remembered her father's voice, a Vietnam veteran who had once told her she'd never be accepted in combat, that she would always have to fight harder just to be seen. That memory echoed now, threatening to drown her resolve. She pressed, her back against a crumbling wall, the crack of simulated bullets tearing overhead. For a moment, doubt whispered that they were right, that she didn't belong. But then she inhaled slowly, steadying her breath, and stepped forward. Her voice cut through the panic. "I know how to get us out. Follow my lead." The men turned, stunned. "You?" One spat. Another shook his head. "This isn't your fight. We're already done." But Emily's voice remained even, her tone unwavering. "I've trained for this. I've studied escape and evasion, silent infiltration. You want to live through this simulation? Trust me." There was no arrogance in her tone, only quiet certainty. The colonel, watching through drone feed in the command tent, leaned forward in his chair. He had seen countless men falter under pressure. What he heard now was different, the voice of someone who believed, even when no one else did. Emily drew her Sig Sauer pistol from her holster and adjusted the combat knife strapped to her vest. Her gear felt heavy but familiar, her lifeline in the chaos. She scanned the ridgeline, marked the blind spots between bursts of gunfire, and planned each step in silence. The environment pressed down around her, the acrid sting of smoke. Grenades, the tremor of simulated blasts rattling the earth, the flicker of shadows that made time crawl. Every detail sharpened in her focus. She crouched low, signaling her team to hold. Then she slipped into the darkness, moving with precision. Her breath slow and steady. Each step was deliberate. Each glance through her night vision goggles revealed enemy silhouettes shifting in the chaos. She flowed between cover points, her pistol raised, eliminating simulated hostiles with quick, efficient shots. At close range, when a target surprised, her knife flashed in silence. One by one, she carved a path forward. The impossible moment arrived. She had reached the ridgeline, the heart of the ambush. If she failed here, the team would remain trapped, the mission lost. She steadied her breathing, raised her pistol, and fired in quick succession. Targets dropped. The choke point crumbled. Silence followed. The gunfire tapered off. Then the radio crackled to life, unjammed. Emily's path had opened the way. Her team surged forward, seizing the opportunity she had carved from the jaws of defeat. They stormed the compound, retrieved the intel, and exfiltrated under the cover of night. When the exercise ended, the unit gathered at the base, sweat-streaked and silent. The men who had once mocked her stared with disbelief. One muttered, "She just led us out of a kill zone." Another whispered, "I didn't think anyone could have done that." Relief mingled with awe, their arrogance replaced with respect. They could no longer deny. Emily remained calm, her pistol holstered, her uniform dusted with sand. She didn't boast. She didn't gloat. When asked how she had done it, she simply said, "I trusted myself. That's all." The colonel stepped into the circle, his voice heavy with authority. "You doubted her," he said flatly. "You said the greats would laugh at her, but tonight she showed you what true greatness is. She didn't just match the warriors of history, she surpassed your expectations, and she carried you when you couldn't carry yourselves." The men lowered their heads, chastened. The lesson was carved into them, undeniable. From that night onward, Captain Emily Carter's name carried weight. No longer dismissed as just a woman, she was remembered as the soldier who led them, out of the shadow of defeat. Because courage is not about being the loudest, nor the strongest. It is about stepping forward when others falter, about believing in yourself when the world doubts you. Emily Carter's story became a reminder whispered in barracks and training grounds that limits are illusions, and true warriors are defined, not by their gender, but by the courage in their hearts. And in the end, when others asked her what drove her, her answer was always the same. Someone had to.